what's changed? Was this address different to what we heard last year, the year before that? The same boring stuff that we hear year on year on year. I realize that the president lacks a sense of situational awareness. And the speech was very rhetorical. I think that it still remained at the level of abstraction. I think that the main purpose of that speech yesterday was to contest the public space. We know that the ANC is losing ground when it comes to the public discourse as the champion of progressive politics. And I mean, if you ask some of first-year university students, they might think that the Freedom Charter was actually drafted by the EFF. So I think that one of the reasons why you have this kind of a speech is the ANC trying to regain the space by talking about issues involving land, those contentious issues that I think they are actually meant for a particular constituency. We will see what is going to happen regarding implementation of that. Requires a great deal of state capacity. We don't have a good state capacity to deal with some of those issues.
What I'm very concerned about is the nature of our democracy. I believe that we've got a pathological democracy that is developing where this behavior has become ritualized and is very difficult to break away from. And the word for that pathological crowd-run democracy is called an ochlocracy. O-C-H-L-O-C-R-A-C-Y. And it's basically a mob surrender to the mob. It's a surrender of your personal judgment. And so you have a small elite leadership running the crowd.
Zimbabwe is the trailer, South Africa is the movie. In other words, there's a talk left, walk right tendency in this part of the world. The failure of liberalized, globalized market economies to deliver the goods. They do say that the JSE, whether ownership or especially control, is still white and especially London controlled, or St. Louis for the beer. The economic crime report puts our bourgeoisie, excuse my French, at the #1 rating for corruption. I was both titillated and saddened that it was so empty, and that the NHI, the cornerstone of our health program, according to the president last night, in 2 weeks will get 0 funding. That I can safely predict.
Jacob Zuma trained Malema and his team there, Floyd, to disrupt the ANC conference in Polokwane. And remember, Zuma was a securocrat. He was never a political leader. He was part of the ANC security system. Expecting ideas about society, about the economy, about all those kinds of things. It's like going to Adrian Flock and asking him about which way the National Party government should go. That wasn't his assignment, and it was never Zuma's assignment. We had 4 fragments of the ANC in the House. You had the UDM, you had COPE, you have Zuma's faction, and you had Julius's faction. And all 4 of them have nothing to contribute to the future of South Africa. They are the past. So what I thought when watching all this, we're sitting with half of our population not totally marginalized from the economy. There wasn't a single mention of this, even in Jacob Zuma's speech. So they are living in a world of their own. South Africa has, for the past 150 years, has been in an Afrikaner and African nationalist mode. Both these nationalisms have reached the end of their road, and they have nothing to contribute to the future of South Africa.
What is happening is parallel politics in the form of commotion. There's no creativity within what is happening, within the speech that comes out, and the response. Even those who criticize have got nothing to offer. The whole thing of radical economic transformation, for me, it is the war of rhetoric. It ends there. It's got nothing to do with the substance of what's going to happen on the ground.
I do believe that we've reached a tipping point in South Africa where after 23 years of democracy, the basic structures of apartheid in the economy remain well embedded, if not better embedded.
For those of you who study the Gini coefficient, you'll know 0.77 before state redistribution, the highest ever measured, right? Unemployment more or less doubled since apartheid. Poverty is 63%. The real debt problem here, I don't think anyone would disagree if you look at the ratios. 43% to GDP. It's our foreign debt. Why? Because of the profit outflow, profit dividends especially, to the big boys, right? Anglo, De Beers, Old Mutual, SAB Miller, the guys that moved to London. That is what a Keynesian strategy to redistribute, to have a higher deficit, to increase the grants instead of Praveen Gordhan continually cutting the grants, 350 Rand a month to raise a child. How many of you will spend more on dinner tonight?
The bedrock of any leadership is integrity. And we keep looking to these guys who've convinced us that instant gratification is the way to go. I think us, so-called black middle class, it's very important to have a clear vision and not be dragged into politics of the past. By you growing, you should also grow others. That is what I'm willing to contribute.
We don't have ideas. We have propagated the World Bank type of thinking, the Bank of International Settlement type of economics, the IMF type of economics. There's nothing new in that. The Minister of Finance is cutting, and that's the language we understand in this country. Cut budget and so on and so forth, and the economy will grow. It will not grow. Hence, we find ourselves at 0.5%.
You must be very careful about local government. Why? There are a bunch of people who behave like warlords there, who actually capture the space to proliferate political interest and so forth. This is where the game plan is going to be massive corruption in the name of autonomy and in the name of decentralization. People are actually building power bases there. And what makes the situation worse is that the ANC structure as a party is perfectly aligned with the government structure. If you are a regional leader, you can be at the municipality at a region. If you are a branch council member, there is a ward. So this thing of perfect alignment, it actually directly translates the ills of the party into local government. That's my concern.
All this thing about land reform is absolute nonsense. We have 30,000 farms in South Africa. 19,000 of those farms are on the market for sale. The average age of a farmer in South Africa is over 60. What is the future of food security for South Africa? You folks have to tell us.
One of the things that can happen outside of government is that we need to start making sure that all investments into the economy have a social measure.
We've got so many malls in South Africa, but we don't have factories.
Big business is looting. I'm sure all of us will know that. They've actually got into township. They didn't actually create new entrepreneurs in the townships. We've got all these big malls that are coming into the township, but they didn't actually bring in transfer skills.
If you really need change in South Africa as the black middle class, we need to start actively participating in thought leadership and actually start attending these BMF, BBC council meetings. We're sitting here with thought leadership with great ideas, but they're not out there channeled in the structures. So how is government going to hear us if we're just having individual voices?
The Chinese have colonized the South China Sea and part of the East China Sea. And the nations around those have their rights been violated by China. Today, 40% of all global trade goes through the South China Sea. China is saying they're going to conquer the sea and everybody has to pay due to them. They will tell you who should come and go and so on. What is building up? China is building up a confrontation between Japan and the United States and Britain and Vietnam and the Philippines and so on. China, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea. This is where we sell our minerals, go through the South China Sea. If there's a shooting war tomorrow, then that's the end of South Africa's exports. What happens to the social grants if we are no longer able to export our minerals? What happens to these huge civil service salaries that are being paid? Trump is spoiling for a fight with China. Xi Jinping is spoiling for a fight with the United States. The Chinese launched their first, what do they call, aircraft carrier a few months ago. And they were practicing in the Taiwan Straits where they know this is going to provoke a reaction from the United States. So the Chinese today have, I think at the last count, 67 submarines patrolling the South China Sea. Now, why are they? It's not their sea. If there is that conflict in the South China Sea, it comes to the Indian Ocean. Because the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean are one sea, actually. We linked with the Malacca Straits, but they're one sea. So we will get embroiled in this. So the question of what is happening in China and in the United States today is very, very real for the future of South Africa.
We need African uprisings against Africa rising, partly because China doesn't demand those resources. Their huge infrastructure boom was 2011 to 13. They used more cement in those 3 years than the US in the 20th century. Now, if that's the kind of export-oriented growth and the Chinese overconsumption, it's then turned into overproduction, which means instead of 400 million tons of steel a year, they produce 1 billion. They only consume 500. And that means we don't have a steel industry. You would agree we need insulation and a change for an inward-oriented, not export-oriented growth strategy in this terrain of extraordinary vulnerability. Could you please challenge local business? And I do include MTN. If they go up continent and loot Africa, which is what they do, right? They take the money to Mauritius. They operate with Boko Haram in Nigeria. If MTN is our model, I'm sorry, this is a disaster. It's called sub-imperialism, the Yankees of Africa. So please, my last question, could you not be better watchdogs on business? Because do you believe Kenneth Brown, who is he, the procurement officer for the Treasury? What did he say last November? They put out 600 billion rand a year in procurement contracts. And capital is overcharging 233 billion rand a year. Stolen. If you're in the middle class, if you're professionals in white capitalist companies that are looting this place, speak up.
It's such a guilt thing to be a middle class. I mean, the ANC reminds you you are their product. White companies really don't want to accept you. You've got to provide home, pay the tax. You go to Tembisa every weekend to cleanse your soul. All of that. I fully understand where you come from. So my final suggestion for the business school, let us change trajectory. If you want to learn, find a way in which you can build an inclusive economy for the poor and marginalized. Solutions are not in Canada. They are here in Rwanda, Chad, and so forth, where people are participating. Send people to areas where the state has failed, so that you can understand how people fend for themselves. We don't have to experience state fail ourselves in order to get those lessons.